Hello and welcome to Follow the Money. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us as we explore the tools and insights you need to jumpstart your financial journey. The Philippines is currently navigating a complex landscape of political upheavals, cybersecurity threats, and maritime disputes, each carrying a significant economic and societal implications. These challenges test the nation's resilience and strategic responses on both domestic and international fronts. Joining us today on Follow the Money is Professor Victor Andres Manhit, CEO and Managing Director of the Stratbase Group, to shed light on these pressing issues. Pleasure to have you again, Professor Dindo, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Raine, for your invitation. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Welcome back to Follow the Money. The ICC arrest, of course, is top of mind. That's by former President Duterte. Professor Manhit, with the recent arrest of Duterte by the International Criminal Court on charges related to his war on drugs, do you foresee any immediate political and economic repercussions for the Philippines?
Economically, I don't see any repercussions because our economy is quite strong at the macroeconomic level. We have our own challenges at the micro level, continuing challenge for the Filipino people, especially on the inflation area, cost of living, as I use the term crisis of cost of living. But on the political, it would remain to be seen as we try to track in our regular surveys, and we will be running some surveys in the next few weeks, and we'll see how the public really reacts. Or is this really simply a social media noise? Because that is what greeted us the past week since the arrest of former President Duterte. So much disinformation, so much information being shared, which cannot really be validated. That's a challenge if it will lead to political concerns or, you'd say, political upheaval on the part of pro-Duterte forces.
Mm-hmm. So it's this misinformation and disinformation, of course, has huge impact. But the direct event itself, do you see a worst case scenario, perhaps that could lay the worst impact, make the worst implication for the Philippine political environment as well as the economy?
We are on an election year, so the best measurement would be the results of the May 2025 election. The candidates of the president continues to come out strong. I still see a possibility of at least 9 or 10 of his 12 candidates might be winning a Senate seat. That will be a strong showing. As we start local campaigns on March 28th, you'd see the addition of the coalition that he has built, his new unity coalition with 5 major parties coalescing together to deliver votes. So this will be very important to really measure how the public feel towards his action. And we have a few weeks to take note of it, and Filipinos can show their support or against it through the ballot. And let's see what the results would be.
So between now and the May 12 election, do you see any events that could percolate and change the trajectory of politics and the economy here in the Philippines?
That's why I mentioned earlier about social media, because what we are feeling is more emotionally being moved, shaped, positioned in social media, more than the streets, more than institutions, more than our own security sector being challenged. So that's more really my concern. And really our political environment, and maybe they have read really the shift of our political arena, whereby the internet, through social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube, continue to be a strong source of political discourse. So that is where my fear is, especially if it's not factual, especially if it goes around the issue that the ICC case is about the killings, the death. As in the name of the ICC case, they use it crimes against humanity, the possible death that was institutionalized during the war on drugs of President Duterte.
Right, and it's never just about optics. It's not just public perception, but international relationships are actually getting affected. In your engagements with the international community, how have they been reacting to the former president's arrest, and is there any impact that this could have on the Philippines' foreign relations and global reputation?
Of course, this was seen as an internal matter, but globally, it was international news. But we live in an order which we call rules-based order. And part of that is respect for international law, respect for the basic human rights of people, no matter how rich or poor they are. And the case in the ICC simply reflects the international rules-based system and how it caught up with President Duterte on his war on drugs. Cases were developed by Filipino volunteer lawyers with victims, and the ICC thought or saw that there is enough evidences maybe shared to them. We are all waiting for those details, enough to have an arrest order for former President Duterte. And I think the international community, if you've noticed, they remain silent because the international community, with the exception of China, because the international community all function within what we call the international rules-based order. And under that rules-based order, it what really brought President Duterte to the ICC.
Mm-hmm. This misinformation and disinformation challenges, we've been beset with it for at least 5 to 10 years now. And despite all the campaigns, information campaigns, media and all kinds of different organizations have been mounting, recent surveys still indicate that 59% of Filipinos, that's majority of Filipinos, find it challenging to identify fake news. Are there still strategies that could be implemented to enhance media literacy and combat misinformation?
I think they have evolved through time. That's why it's hard to deal with them. And we have allowed it really to spread, allowed and not have made anyone accountable for the spread of fake news in the country. I have seen how the internet as a source of news has risen from just 3% in 2017 to a high of nearly 70% this election year. And so these players, sources of disinformation, misinformation, malign influence information campaigns, have really saw the opportunity of our strong social media environment in the country, where over 100% of Filipinos that has access to online or the internet has Facebook connection or membership, follows the YouTube. So they play into this kind of atmosphere. And for those who look at Facebook and YouTube as a source of light information, way to connect with their friends, when they see it being posted, at times it's so hard for them to distinguish. Just the best example to that is what we experienced from the day or the night of the arrest of President Duterte. We saw how social media was shaping the narrative and never even gave the opportunity to listen to the reason why the government, through its commitment to the coordination with the Interpol, allowed the arrest. And on the part of the ICC, it was about the cases that was filed against them, that was built through evidences, and they found basis for it. That's why it led to the arrest. But what we saw is about kidnapping. What we saw was about indignation globally by world leaders that never really happened, or by celebrities that never really happened. Because when you look at the news, international news, who is as objective as they can be, they simply reflected, shared the narrative of why the case was filed and why the case led to the arrest of the president. But we saw in our social media a different narrative, one shaping our narrative that this wasn't illegal. And experts, legal experts, were not allowed to contribute to the rational discussion of this. We have a Filipino, a former ICC judge who spoke about this. And that is what should have been discussed, how it does not matter because what matters is really the case that was filed. And in those cases, it's up for us all to wait for the details of those cases. But this information shaped the narrative.
Perhaps
and
crucial.
we continue to discuss it.
Right. Well, perhaps crucial to stopping disinformation and misinformation and the spinning of particular stories is to stop the perpetrators and finding out exactly where it's coming from. And that's what we're going to discuss in a moment. We just have to pause for a few reminders, but we'll be back with Professor Dindo Manhit in a moment. Stay on BNC and follow the money. Welcome back to Follow the Money. We're still with Stratbase Group CEO and Managing Director Dindo Manhit. Professor, cybersecurity threats from foreign entities. Of course, you've had a recent report about it, rising cyber attacks, the potential economic losses, of course, 6.15 billion pesos daily for top listed firms, and about Philippine organizations up to $3.5 billion in economic losses. Are there measures that government should take to bolster cybersecurity defenses against such threats?
We have to accept the reality that we live in a shadow war, or somebody would say asymmetric warfare already. Accept it's here. It's not an evolving threat, but it's an actual threat in a hybrid type of warfare. So the best is to assess our capacity internally in our own government agencies and work with technology partners, because there are legitimate international companies that have done well in fighting cybersecurity or creating cybersecurity infrastructure. But part of that also is maximizing. We have done well in building relationship with other countries to deal with their maritime challenges. Why don't we even expand to cyber diplomacy and find ways to work with countries that have dealt with these challenges? And from there, assess where we are, what our needs are, and work with these countries. Maybe they can link us up with their companies, the technologies from their countries. But it starts simply with accepting that it's here and we need an honest assessment of our capacity to deal with it. What is lacking? What needs to be done? But of course, aside from cybersecurity, we have the realization that we also live in what I call, they have weaponized our social media. They're hacking our minds through disinformation, misinformation, and malign influence. That is quite critical. Internally, we need our government, especially our security sector, to really track this web of disinformation that might even cause political instability in our country. No? It's best to learn also from our experience last week. We heard, we watched the news. Suddenly, look at what happened in our social media platforms, the comment sections of even legitimate media companies were under attack with this information. That's very dangerous.
It's interesting how you've been able to tie in, the campaign of disinformation and misinformation to cybersecurity threats, and then into our maritime and territorial claims. Of course, that's worth about $5 trillion in the trade routes. Now, given the ongoing maritime disputes in the West Philippine Sea, you mentioned, of course, work with other maritime partners. How else should the Philippines assert its territorial claims while maintaining diplomatic relations with neighboring countries?
We have to accept that our strength emanates from we live in a rules-based order, a rules-based international system that made us equal to even a bigger, more powerful northern neighbor like China. As we look at the West Philippine Sea or even the Eastern Philippine Sea or the Philippine Rise, these are important trade routes. Not only important trade routes, Raine, but also important area where submarine cables pass through, data flows pass through our archipelagic seas. So critical to that is working with like-minded countries. And we have to give credit to the government of President Marcos Jr., how he has put this as a priority as he engaged. In the news, we always talk about how his travels in the past was meant for economic security, bringing in investment. But as he built those relationships, we have seen, especially since the latter part or the mid part of 2023, how we have been engaged by countries that we can call like-minded, that issues not only strong statements, but visits the Philippines through their ships to commit with us in protecting our sovereign territory and our exclusive economic zone. And we have built this through strategic partnership, broadening our alliances, and signing, negotiating with defense cooperation after defense cooperation. So this is critical. And we should keep up in broadening this space. We have seen the interest of EU countries. And beyond EU, we saw even the Secretary of Defense or the Minister of Defense of the United Kingdom visiting us. Now we have a frigate ship from Italy traveling. A few weeks from now, we will be experiencing the Balikatan exercise, where broader nations that share their belief that the West Philippine Sea is ours, our territorial and economic zones is ours, sharing that belief, working with us to deter any aggression. This is key. This might be small steps, or this might be too late for some people, but still, we have to catch up. We lost 6 years from 2016 when we won the case to doing nothing since till 2022. So the past 3 years have been quite aggressive for our president, and we should give value to that.
Apart from, on the side, Professor, apart from helping the Philippines protect its sovereignty, what are the other interests of European countries in the Philippines?
You know, their interest becomes our interest because our trade routes are important. A lot of people talk of the importance of Singapore and the Malacca Strait, or the importance of the Taiwan island, or the Republic of Taiwan. But I always share that when you look at these two countries, they need to pass through the West Philippine Sea. Any ships traveling north from Malacca Strait of Singapore passes through the West Philippine Sea. Anyone who would like to reach the north part of East Asia, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, needs to pass through the Luzon Strait, the West Philippine Sea. And even those who would like to do trade from North America, South America, needs to pass through the northern part of the Philippines before passing through the eastern part of the Philippines, the Philippine Rise. So their interest to secure a stable, peaceful territorial seas of the Philippines is of their interest because they would like those trade routes to always be secure. And they are one with us in ensuring that our trade routes through our seas continue to be peaceful and secured, and rules are followed based on international law. The rules-based order dominating the presence of ships, movements of trade, and even investment on submarine cables and infrastructures in those areas.
Right, so coming from protecting us from attacks on our trade routes to our data routes, and then also, I would say, services. You did mention that our IT BPM sector might also be kind of vulnerable at the moment, and that's why there are reforms that could potentially boost GDP by 1.1%. Of course, the sector is targeting reforms to maintain competitiveness. Apparently, services are on a decline. What specific policy changes should be proposed or are being proposed, and how might they impact foreign investment and job creation here?
It has been a main driver of our economy, service sector, especially the ICT, business process outsourcing sector in the Philippines. Government needs to do its best to continue to incentivize the growth of this industry and not also incentivize the entry of new players, or even elevate our ICT BPO sector to the next level of services. They remain to be challenged by future AI disruption, But I think that our capacity to adapt through these challenges, and we have seen that. So we need our government to make sure how can this industry continue to grow in our country. It has contributed a lot to our economy. It has contributed indirectly with the jobs that they have created, which led to more consumption for younger people in our country. So government needs to see it as a growth area still. And I even would like to add the creative industry that is tied up to it. The creative, the game developers, these are still ICT, BPO. There are a lot of opportunities for growth in the sector. We need government to listen to them. We need government to ensure that taxes are not as a disincentive to this sector. We should ensure that proper government regulations, even at the local government levels, really create not a challenge to the ease of doing business in the country. Because we need them here. We need them to continue to grow. We need even other countries to take note of our capacity and bring more business in the country.
True enough, a lot of economists and analysts from around the region are highlighting the Philippines' digital economy, that much of our future also lies there. And so the government must take a look at how best to prop them up. Now, because we've discussed a lot of topics already and we've come full circle, perhaps as a final question, Professor Manhit, if there could be a main message to advocate for in handling threats to the Philippine economy, security, sovereignty, and the like, what would you suggest it would be?
Our national interest is our own economic security. We need to protect what is ours. We need to protect it based on international law. And we want that using international law. But internally, we need to look at these things from a geopolitical, geoeconomic. How can it create a better life for the Philippine people? How can our relationship with like-minded countries that help us protect our territorial seas, our archipelago, also create opportunities for business to grow, investments for jobs to be created? And we can only provide that by even having a more stable political environment, governance that is responsive and transparent, services of government that is always be responsive to the needs of their client, in this case, business sector, ready to invest, ready to create jobs. So it takes a strategic collaboration between the public sector, our government, the private sector, our investors, and even the international community. And maybe from there, we can really move forward and continue to grow and grow our economy, as we have seen these past few years.
Short and sweet. On that note, Professor Victor Andres Dindo Manhit, CEO and Managing Director of the Stratbase Group, has provided invaluable insights into the multifaceted challenges facing the Philippines today. Thank you so much for sharing your deep insights with us, sir, and we hope to speak with you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, from addressing internal political dynamics and external security threats to ensuring economic resilience and information integrity, it is evident that a comprehensive and strategic approach is essential for the nation's progress. And that is it for today's edition of Follow the Money. I'm Raine Musñgi. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel, always on top.